The shot cracked across Main Street like a thrown horseshoe hitting stone. May Callahan didn't wait to think. She dropped to her knees and wrapped Jamie in both arms, dragging him hard against her chest. Her back slammed into the alley wall behind the Mercantile, scraping her shoulder against brick. Jamie yelped, more in surprise than pain. "Mama." His voice trembled against her collarbone. "Don't move," she whispered, one hand finding the small of his back, the other reaching under her skirt toward the tiny knife stitched into the lining. "Stay low." The crowd beyond the alley hesitated. Just a breath. Then someone laughed, loud and forced. "Just some cowpoke shootin' the sky. Nothin' to fret." Music resumed, a fiddle reeling too fast to feel safe. A cheer went up near the pie stand. Boots stomped dirt. The festival forced itself forward. May didn't move. Her heart banged like a hammer in a hollow barrel. She could feel Jamie's fingers curling tighter into her sleeve. Smell the dust rising off the ground. Taste the old metal of fear on her tongue. The exact same metallic tang as the night the saloon door burst open in Stillwater. The same smell, the same sky, even. The kind that looked too blue to trust. "Mama, my knees hurt." Jamie whispered, "I know, baby." She looked past him into the light spilling from the alley mouth. Everything was too bright, too exposed, just like back then. The sound that had yanked her back into that memory wasn't the gunfire. It was what came after, laughter, the casual way the danger had been brushed off, like it didn't matter who flinched, or why. "You said maybe we could get candy," Jamie said, quieter now, "if we had the pennies." May didn't answer. She glanced back into the alley, empty crates, one cracked shutter, nothing useful, no escape except back through the crowd, back through the eyes. 3 weeks. That's how long they'd lasted in Deadwood. It was already too long. She forced herself to look down at Jamie. His face was flushed, hair sticking to his forehead. He looked so much like Robert in that moment it made her ribs tighten. "Are we leavin'?" he asked. Barely above a whisper, she opened her mouth, closed it again. They could leave tonight. Edith wouldn't ask questions. She never did. There was always a train, always a road, always a back route out of anywhere, always another town that didn't know. But Jamie would. He'd know they were running again. "No," May said finally. "We're not leavin'. Not yet." She uncurled from the wall and helped Jamie to his feet. The hem of her skirt had torn on something sharp. She brushed off his pants with shaking hands, then straightened. Her body wanted to crumple. Her spine didn't listen. The noise from the square swelled as they stepped into the light. A barrel-chested man tipped his hat, barely looking at her. 2 women across the road paused mid-sentence. One narrowed her eyes. The other pretended not to see. May kept walking. She didn't need to look to know Jamie was keeping step with her on the right side, opposite her knife hand. He always did that, without being told. They passed a cart with ribbons fluttering in the breeze, red, white, and blue. Pioneer Day. They'd called it, a celebration of settlement and virtue and God-fearing community. May stopped just short of the candy stall. Mr. Wong smiled from behind the counter, but she caught it. The brief flicker of concern behind his eyes. She didn't blame him. Her hands were still shaking, her hair had come loose. There was probably dust on her cheek. Jamie didn't seem to notice. His face pressed to the glass display, eyes wide. "We've got licorice today," Mr. Wong said, still watching my fresh batch. "Little strong, little sweet." Jamie looked up at her, not daring to speak. May reached into her pocket 3 copper pennies. She laid them on the counter. "Licorice," she said, "just a twist." Mr. Wong wrapped the piece gently and handed it to Jamie with both hands. "Eat it slow, little man." Jamie nodded solemnly, clutching the paper like it was gold. May turned to leave, and froze. Mrs. Prudence Langley was standing 10 feet away, flanked by 2 women from the ladies' committee. Her chin was high, her posture starched stiff as always, and her pale eyes swept May from boot, heel to braid. "Miss Callahan," she said. The miss dragged like a hooked nail. May forced her mouth into something resembling a polite smile. "Mrs. Langley, I don't believe I've seen you at Sunday service." "I work mornings. Edith needs help with breakfast for the boarders." "A shame. A woman in your position might benefit from spiritual guidance." May heard it, so did everyone within earshot. Jamie moved behind her skirt, May opened her mouth, then felt her throat close. Not now, not with Jamie here, not with eyes watching. She started to turn away. "Ma'am." The voice came from behind her, low, calm, southern. May turned. Rhett Morgan stood a few feet back, one hand resting on the brass buckle of his belt, the other lightly touching the brim of his hat. He was taller than she remembered from across the square. Sun-browned, clean-shaven, but with a trace of dust along his collar. His eyes met hers. Steady, unreadable. He looked back to Mrs. Langley. "Don't believe I caught your name," he said politely. Mrs. Langley blinked, thrown off. "Prudence Langley," she said. "My husband runs the bank." "Ach." Rhett nodded, then turned to May. "And you're Miss Callahan." "It wasn't a question, yes," she said, trying to keep her voice level. Rhett smiled slightly, just at the corners. "Pleasure to finally meet you proper. Heard you've been helping out Miss Morse. She says you've got steady hands." May didn't know what to say. Jamie peeked around her, licorice halfway to his mouth. Rhett crouched slightly, looking Jamie in the eye. "You must be the fella who stared down a whole parade band without flinchin'. Heard you didn't even blink when the drum corps passed." Jamie frowned. "Wasn't scared. Didn't figure you were." Rhett straightened, looked back to Mrs. Langley. "If you'll excuse us, I promised this young man we'd pick out a second suite. On me this time." He looked to May. "If that's all right with his mama." May said nothing, couldn't. Mrs. Langley's lips had gone thin. "Mr. Morgan, I suggest you reconsider who you're associating with. This town has standards. So does my mother," Rhett said lightly. "She raised me to believe folks deserved a fair shake." Mrs. Langley inhaled sharply. "Well, I'll be speaking to my husband. I hope you do." She walked off, heels clicking sharp on the plank walkway. May exhaled only when she was out of earshot. "You didn't have to do that," she said. Rhett shrugged. "Didn't seem right, letting her talk at you like that in front of your boy." Jamie held up his licorice. "He's real nice, Mama." May nodded, barely trusting her voice. "I should get back," she said. Rhett stepped aside to let her pass. As she turned away, he spoke, quiet enough only she could hear. "Some folks ain't worth hidin' from forever." She didn't answer. Not because she didn't want to, because she couldn't afford to. She took Jamie's hand, feeling the small warmth of his fingers. They were 2 steps from the candy stand when she saw it, a single boot print in the alley dirt behind the mercantile, too deep for a passerby. Toes turned in, half heel worn smooth. Someone had stood there watching. She didn't say a word, just kept walking. But her grip on Jamie's hand tightened. They'd have to move again. Unless they did something first. He said my name like he already knew it. The man who made that boot print wasn't wearing it anymore. The next morning, the boot print was gone, swept up in the bustle of Pioneer Day cleanup, buried under fresh wagon ruts and the trample of early market feet. As if it had never been there, but May Callahan remembered. She remembered the depth of the tread, the shape of the heel. No one else would have noticed. But she'd spent 2 years watching shadows and counting steps. She hadn't slept. Not really. Jamie had clutched his wooden horse in sleep, the licorice wrapper still in his pocket. She'd lain beside him, eyes open to the ceiling, listening to every creak of the boarding house, every thud of boot on stair, every snore through thin walls. Her hand had stayed on the knife hidden beneath her pillow. Now, in the light of day, everything looked safer. But she knew better than to trust the look of things. The town had mostly moved on from yesterday's crack shot and Mrs. Langley's public rebuke. But rumors hung in Deadwood like wood smoke, thin, persistent, and always clinging to fabric you thought was clean. May carried the breakfast tray to the porch where Edith Morse was waiting with her pipe and a dish rag. "You walkin' Jamie down to the square today?" Edith asked. "Not looking up, maybe?" May said. Edith huffed through her teeth. "You look like you didn't sleep a wink." May didn't answer. Edith took a long pull from her pipe. "I saw you talkin' to that rancher, Rhett Morgan." May stopped wiping the tray. "He's been sleeping in the corner room 2 nights a week. Pays up front. Doesn't smell like liquor or trouble. Far as I can tell, he's a man who minds his own business unless someone gives him reason not to." May waited. Edith gave her a look. You think you're the only one who watches where people walk. That got a ghost of a smile. Don't run. Edith said simply. Not unless your boots are already on. You run too early, people remember you. Run too late, they catch up. May nodded, then turned back into the house. Later that afternoon, she found Jamie in the hallway with his face pressed to the window. Do we have to go back through the alley? He asked without turning. No, May said. She knelt, brushed his hair flat, straightened his collar. We'll walk around the front. Like everyone else. Is the bad man still here? I don't know, baby, but he won't catch us off guard. Jamie looked up. He didn't catch us before. She kissed the top of his head. You're right. He didn't. Jamie's face brightened. Can we still find the creek like Rhett said? The stone, skipping spot? May hesitated. She hadn't planned to. Every part of her told her to lay low. Avoid the square. Avoid any attention, kind or kind-hearted. But Jamie was already putting on his boots. She watched him tug the laces, face scrunched in concentration. May closed her eyes. If she said no, he'd understand. And he'd carry it with him. Like he carried the silence from Stillwater. Like he carried the way people looked at them in every new town. Kids remember the weight of being denied, especially when they're too young to name the reason. We'll go, she said softly. Just for a little while. Jamie whooped. They crossed through the quieter edge of town, keeping off the main drag. The sun was warm on her neck. Jamie skipped beside her, horse tucked under one arm, asking whether fish ever got hit by skipping stones. Probably, May said. But they're smart. They duck. That made him laugh. At the far side of the square, just past the livery, she spotted him. Rhett Morgan was leaning against the hitching post outside the smithy, rolling a cigarette. His sleeves were pushed up to the elbow, one hand smudged with grease, the other holding a match. He straightened when he saw them, tucked the smoke behind his ear. You found your way, he said. We did. May replied. She noticed Jamie already half a step ahead of her, eyes scanning the road beyond Rhett like it was a trail waiting to be explored. Rhett tipped his hat. Wasn't sure you'd come. I almost didn't. That'd be fair. Jamie tugged May's hand. Is it far? The skipping place. Rhett glanced at her, waiting. May nodded once. Just down past those cottonwoods. Rhett said, pointing, come on. The creek wasn't wide, but the water was clean and fast-moving. Stones lined the banks, smooth and flat in places. Jamie ran ahead, already stooping to inspect rocks with the earnestness of a gold panner. May stood a few feet behind, arms crossed loosely, her skirt brushing the grass. He's a good boy, Rhett said quietly. He's had to grow up faster than he should have. He's sharp. He has to be. Rhett didn't push further. Instead, he crouched beside Jamie, showing him how to test a stone for balance, how to hold it flat against the fingers, how to flick the wrist. May watched him, wondering what made a man like that step in yesterday. What he'd seen, or survived, that made him notice women who flinched when the crowd laughed too loud. I was scared of chickens when I was his age, Rhett said, tossing a pebble that skipped once before sinking. Jamie giggled. Chickens. Mean old rooster on my uncle's farm. Used to chase me round the barn every sunrise. Jamie tried to skip his rock. It plopped. He grinned anyway. May's shoulders eased. Just a fraction. She walked closer, knelt, and plucked a flat gray stone from the edge of the creek. Let me try, she said. Her wrist flicked. The stone skipped twice, then dropped. Jamie stared. How'd you do that? May smiled. Just a little. Been running a long time. You learn how to throw what you don't need. The words left her mouth before she could take them back. Rhett didn't say anything, but his eyes met hers, and something passed between them. Quiet, heavy, and not ready for words. Jamie ran off to find more stones. May sat on a flat rock near the water's edge, watching the sunlight filter through the trees. Rhett joined her. Sitting on a root, he reached into his vest and pulled out a small twist of paper. Licorice, he said, leftover from yesterday. Jamie darted back. Mama said we shouldn't take candy from strangers. Good thing I ain't a stranger, Rhett said. Not anymore. Jamie looked at May. She paused, then nodded. Rhett handed over the licorice. They sat like that for a while. No big talk, no questions, just rocks and candy and water. And then Jamie asked, through a mouthful of sweetness, "Are you going to teach me to skip stones again next Sunday?" May stiffened. Rhett glanced at her before answering. "If your mama says it's all right." Jamie turned to her, eyes wide. "Can he? Please." May swallowed, her fingers curled into the fabric of her skirt. Letting this happen meant something. Letting it happen again meant more. "Maybe," she said. "We'll see." Rhett didn't push. He nodded and stood. "Hum on, partner," he said. "Time to head back before the sun burns your nose off." Jamie laughed and ran ahead, horse under one arm, pockets jangling with stones. May stayed behind just long enough to see Rhett pause at the edge of the trees. He turned to her. "You said he hadn't had many folks pay attention to him." May blinked. "Sometimes," Rhett said. "It takes one." And then he walked on. May watched his back, then looked down at the skipping stone still in her hand. She turned it over once, then let it fall into the creek. It sank without a ripple. She followed the sound of Jamie's laughter through the cottonwoods. "He doesn't have many people in his life," she'd told Rhett. And now, she owed him something for that. Jonas Pike was watching from the other bank, and this time, he didn't look drunk. The sun was dipping low, turning the creek water copper when May spotted the figure. He stood half, hidden by a leaning cottonwood on the far bank, one shoulder against the trunk, arms slack at his sides. His coat hung uneven, like it hadn't been washed or buttoned right in weeks. A stained hat shaded most of his face, but not enough to hide the way his eyes tracked Jamie, back and forth, stone to stone. Like someone cataloging something he'd once owned and lost, May's breath caught. Not just because of the way he watched, but because somewhere, beneath the dirt, beneath the sag of years, she recognized the angle of that jaw. Jonas Pike. It had been over 2 years since she'd seen him. He'd looked thinner then, sober, preaching in a crooked church with 3 pews, and a roof that whistled when the wind hit it right. That was before Robert fired him, before the fights, before the bottle became his second gospel. Now he looked like a ghost, and not the harmless kind. Jamie turned to skip another stone, his laughter echoing across the water. Jonas took a step forward. May stood, fast enough to startle Rhett. He looked at her, then followed her gaze to the man across the creek. His eyes narrowed. "You know him?" Rhett asked. Voice low. May didn't answer. "Not yet." Jamie waved a stick in the air like a sword. Jonas didn't wave back. May called out, "Jamie, time to go." Jamie groaned. "Just one more. Now." Her tone cut through whatever game he was playing. He dropped the stick. Rhett touched May's elbow lightly. "You all right?" She nodded, though she wasn't sure it was true. Her mouth had gone dry. Jonas made no move to cross the creek, just stood there, hat dipped low, like he was waiting for her to blink first. She didn't. She took Jamie's hand and walked, keeping her back straight, never looking away until the trees took the figure from view. That night, May locked the boarding house door herself, even though Edith said she always did before bed. She double-checked the windows in their room and pushed the dresser half an inch closer to the sill, just in case. Jamie had fallen asleep with the wooden horse tucked under his chin. May sat on the edge of the bed and tried to breathe slow, calm, like Rhett had at the creek. Like she hadn't just seen a man who knew exactly what she was running from. Her mind walked backward, past the cottonwoods, past the laughter, back to Stillwater. Jonas Pike hadn't hurt her, not like Robert did, but he'd seen things, heard things, and he hadn't stopped them. He'd looked away, and now he was here. She pressed her palms against her eyes until colors flared behind the lids. Then she stood and reached for the coat hook behind the door. Her fingers brushed metal. The knife was still there. But it wasn't the blade that would save her this time. It would be what she could prove or silence. Either way, Jonas Pike had to be handled. The next morning, Rhett was already in the dining room when May came downstairs. He had a tin cup in one hand and a deck of worn cards in the other, laying them out in slow, patient stacks. "Good morning," he said, not looking up. May poured herself coffee. "Was he there before you came?" she asked. Rhett paused. "Jonas?" She nodded. "No. He showed up sometime after you. Been sleeping in the alley behind the saloon some nights, others in the back of the freight house. Drinking. Mostly. Talking to himself. Unless someone's paying. May set her cup down harder than she meant to. Rhett glanced up. He said something. No, she said. Not yet. Rhett waited, but she said no more. Instead, she turned to go. My, he said quietly. She stopped. Rhett put the deck down. You don't need to tell me everything, but if there's something coming, something worse than a drunk with a bad memory, I'd rather know. She looked at him, then away. He used to be a preacher, she said, in Stillwater. Before Robert. That name soared the air. Rhett leaned back in his chair. May crossed her arms. He knew what Robert was. Knew what he did. But he never stood up. Rhett's jaw flexed once, but he didn't speak. I don't know why he's here, May said. But if he remembers, if he tells the wrong person. Rhett stood slow. Then we find out what he wants. And we deal with it. May stared at him. There's no in this. There is now. Later that day, she found Jonas sitting on the back step of the mercantile, chewing a piece of jerky like it owed him money. He didn't look up when she approached. Took you long enough, he muttered. May stayed 3 steps back. What do you want? Jonas scratched at his beard. Thought maybe I imagined it. That it wasn't you. Then the boy said your name. May felt the blood drain from her hands. Cute kid. Better off not knowin' what kind of man sired him. Her voice was ice. Leave him out of this. Jonas shrugged. Didn't come here for him. Then why? He finally looked at her. I heard Robert setting himself up back in Stillwater. Fancy new saloon. Friends-in-law. Talk is he's cleanin' up his name. Gonna run for councilman. May's throat tightened. Jonas wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Man like that can't afford ghosts. She narrowed her eyes. You came here to blackmail me, no. He leaned back, expression unreadable. I came here 'cause I figured one of us ought to say sorry. She blinked. He looked away. I shoulda stopped him. Shoulda said something. But he paid me not to? May swallowed hard now. Jonas said, I can't sleep right. I drink, I rot. And you show up here like a shadow I buried wrong. May said nothing. He stood slowly, knees cracking. I got nothing left, May. Not even enough shame to run. So if you want to put a knife in me, do it now. She didn't move. He nodded. Once. Didn't think so. As he turned to walk away, May asked, You tell anyone else? Jonas paused. No, he said, but I might. Depends who's askin', and how they ask. He limped off down the alley. May stood there a long time, staring at the spot where he'd been. That night, as the sun slipped behind the hills, Jamie knelt beside the bed and said his prayers in a voice barely above a whisper. May sat beside the window, watching the dark thicken outside. She didn't see Jonas again that evening, but just after midnight, something thudded near the back porch. She crept downstairs, knife in hand. A bottle rolled against the steps, empty, a crumpled paper bag beside it. Inside the bag a single coin, foreign, too clean. She picked it up, on one side. A stamped bird she didn't recognize, on the other. 3 letters R.C. She dropped it like it burned. He's not just drunk, she realized. He's keeping score. You ran from Stillwater, didn't you? Jonas slurred, staring right at her. Jonas Pike showed up again 2 nights later. This time on the boarding house porch. It was near sundown. May had just finished folding the last sheet from the line, when she spotted him sitting on the bottom step, shoulders slumped, a bottle hanging loosely from one hand. He wasn't drinking it, just holding it, like a prop he no longer knew how to use. Edith Morse stood in the doorway with her arms crossed, jaw locked. I told him to get off my damn steps. She muttered. May didn't answer. Jonas looked up, eyes bleary but focused. Didn't come for trouble, he said, just hungry. May felt the old tremor return. Low in her belly, just above the hips, where instinct used to scream before reason could speak. She didn't move. Edith spat into the yard. Fool's been sniffing around for days. I found him sleepin' in the back shed yesterday. Could have run him off, but... Her voice trailed off. May finally stepped forward. Give him bread. Edith blinked. You serious? Just bread. Edith made a noise low in her throat but disappeared inside. A minute later she returned, tossed a cloth-wrapped heel of bread into Jonas's lap like it was a rock. He took it without thanks, without looking up. Eat, May said. He did, chewing slow, silent. Jamie peeked around the curtain upstairs. May saw the flash of his wooden horse in the window reflection. When Jonas finished, he wiped his mouth with his sleeve. His voice was hoarse. "Didn't ask to be followed here, Mai. You're the one who keeps showing up. Don't got many places left to be." Mai glanced down the road, then back to him. "Don't make this town one of Jonas chuckled. "Dry and thin, you think I got plans? Hell, I barely got boots." He stood too fast. The bottle slipped from his hand and shattered on the steps. Edith flinched but didn't move. Jonas didn't apologize, he just looked at May. "You should leave," she said. He grinned, but there was no humor in it. "Leave? May, the stink you're running from, it's already here." Then he staggered off into the dusk. Edith waited a full 10 seconds after he was gone before speaking. "You gonna tell me why that man knows your name and walks like he buried it wrong?" May turned toward the door. "He's nobody." Edith's voice followed her. "Nobody don't leave dead bottles and loaded words on my porch." May didn't answer. Upstairs, Jamie sat cross-legged on the bed, the wooden horse on his lap. Who was that man? May sat beside him. "Someone I used to know. A long time ago. He was mean." May hesitated. "No, not mean. Just didn't stop mean from happening." Jamie looked down at the horse, then back up. "We have to leave again, don't we?" She wanted to say no. God, how she wanted to say it, but the word stuck. "I don't know yet." Jamie nodded like he understood, but his hands gripped the horse tighter. That night, May stayed up long after he slept, watching the street, watching the dark. She didn't see Jonas again, but she knew that didn't mean he was gone. The next morning, Rhett found her behind the boarding house, chopping wood. Her arms ached, her palms had gone red and raw. She kept swinging anyway. "You'll burn out before winter," he said. May stopped mid-swing, turned. Rhett had 2 mugs in hand, steam curling from both. She set the axe aside and took the mug he offered. "Thought you'd be gone by now," he said. May drank. The coffee was hot and bitter, just the way she needed it. "He's still in town," she said. "I know. Why?" Rhett didn't answer immediately. "I asked around. Seems Jonas has been poking into things. Asking about you. About your boy." May went cold. "Who's he talking to?" "Mostly folks who don't listen. But it only takes one who does." May turned back to the chopping block. "Then maybe I should go." "You could," Rhett said quietly, "or you could stay and face it." She shook her head. "You don't understand." "I understand enough." May slammed the axe down into a fresh log. "If Robert knows where I am, if he hears anything." "He won't," Rhett said. "Not if we stay ahead of it." May scoffed. "You say that like I haven't tried. Every damn town, every rented room, every fake last name. I've stayed ahead of it for 6 years. And still he finds a way to stink up the air I breathe." Rhett's voice was steady. "Then, maybe it's time to stop running." May didn't reply, but something in her stopped swinging. That afternoon, the bell over the church rang early. It wasn't Sunday. Not yet. Edith came back from the grocer with her mouth set in a line. "Langley's called an extra ladies committee meetin'. Word is, it's about you." May felt her stomach twist. "Why?" Edith shrugged. "Take your pick. That you're not married. That your boy's too quiet. That Rhett Morgan's been seen walking you home." May turned to go. "Don't," Edith warned. "They're lookin' for blood. Don't hand 'em the basin." Mai stopped. Her hands trembled. "Let 'em talk." Edith added, "The town remembers longer than it forgives." May stared at the wall for a long moment. Then she turned around and walked back inside. But the damage was already done. By evening, a note appeared on her door. No signature. No handwriting she recognized. Just 2 words, scrawled in ink that bled through the page. "Jit Oot." Taped to it was the tail of a bird. Fresh cut, still wet. May didn't scream, didn't even gasp. She just peeled the paper off, folded it once, and carried it downstairs. Edith was in the kitchen, shelling peas. May dropped the note on the table. Edith read it, didn't blink. Then she stood, went to the stove, grabbed a coal tongue, and stuffed the paper into the firebox. The flames took it greedily. May stared at the place where it vanished. "I'm not going," she said. Edith didn't look at her. "Good." May looked down at her hands. Still shaking. What if it's not just talk this time? Edith's voice was hard. Then we talk louder. That night, May stood outside the boarding house after everyone had gone to bed. She held the small scarf Jamie had dropped earlier that day. It still smelled like his sweat and licorice. From across the street, a voice drifted from the alley, low, slurred, familiar. She followed it, slow, silent. Jonas Pike was sitting in the dirt, legs splayed, half asleep. Preachers don't sleep easy. He muttered, not when they bury things they should have confessed. May stood above him. He looked up, squinting, smiled. My Callahan. He slurred. You look like a judgment day I forgot to run from. She didn't smile back. You need to leave. Jonas rubbed his face. Robert's gonna come looking for you. And when he does, he'll bury this whole town if you're still breathing here. May stepped closer. What do you mean when? Jonas chuckled. You think men like him forget a stain like you? May's fingers curled around the scarf. Jonas, she said. He blinked. You tell anyone about me, I'll finish what Robert started. That wiped the smile off his face, but only for a moment. Then he leaned back and laughed. You don't get it, he said. I ain't afraid of you. Or him. I'm just tired of ghosts. May turned and walked away behind her. Jonas kept laughing, but the sound didn't follow her home. Still, it clung to her. Like smoke. She locked the door, pressed the scarf into the drawer, and watched Jamie breathe. She wouldn't run, not this time. Mama, are we running again? Jamie whispers, clutching his wooden horse. A stone thudded against her window in the dead of night. And this time it wasn't alone. The first stone hit her window just past midnight. The second came 5 minutes later, a different angle, slightly louder. The third cracked the lower pane. May didn't scream. She sat up in bed, heartbeat in her throat, and reached for the knife on the nightstand. Jamie stirred beside her, but didn't wake. She waited, breath shallow, counting. When no fourth stone came, she rose and moved to the window, barefoot, silent. She eased the curtain just enough to peek through. Nothing, no one. Just wind pushing against the sycamores, and a stray paper dancing across the street, like it had somewhere better to be. But someone had thrown them, that she knew. Someone had walked close enough, aimed high enough, to make her room the target. It was a message, and it wasn't subtle. At breakfast, Edith found the cracked glass before May could mention it. God's teeth, she muttered, running a thumb over the damage. Second window this month. May said nothing. She hadn't slept after the third stone. She'd watched shadows until the sun turned them back into people. Jamie sat at the table, swinging his legs. Oblivious, the wooden horse rested in his lap as always. You gonna report it to Sheriff Burke? Edith asked. No point? May said. He'll just say boys get bored at night. Edith snorted. Maybe he'll care more if we throw rocks at his window. May touched the cracked glass once more, then turned away. Edith gave her a look. You walkin' or runnin'? Neither, May said. I'm deciding. She slipped out before more questions came. The church stood quiet, its bell long since gone still. May didn't go inside. She sat on the low stone wall that ran along its edge and watched the morning unfold. Shopkeepers unbolted doors, chickens squabbled over feed, 2 boys chased each other with sticks. Life continued. Blind or pretending to be. She was still there when Rhett found her. Didn't see you at breakfast, he said. I wasn't hungry. He didn't sit beside her, just leaned against the same wall, arms crossed. I heard about the window. May nodded. They're trying to scare you. They're succeeding. Rhett watched her a moment. You scared enough to run again. May looked down at her hands. They were steady now. Finally, no, she said. Rhett gave a small nod. Good. A silence passed between them. But it wasn't empty. Finally, she asked. If I came to the potluck, would that make things better? Or worse? He didn't answer right away. I think folks are waitin' to see whether you're proud or ashamed. May laughed. Bitter. And if I'm just tired? Then come tired. But come standing up. She looked at him then, really looked. You'd walk with me? He met her gaze. Every step. May exhaled a slow, quiet thing, then she nodded, just once. The next morning, town buzzed with whispers. The ladies' committee, led by Mrs. Langley herself, had met privately at the church and released a list of Acceptable contributions. For the Sunday potluck, May's name wasn't on it, but her pie was. Sherry. Edith read aloud from the pinned notice, snorting. They'll eat your cooking, just not your company. May stared at the paper. I'm still bringing it, she said. Edith looked at her sideways. Damn right you are. Sunday came hot and clear. May rose early, washed Jamie's only good shirt, and tied back her hair with a blue ribbon he liked. Are we going to church? He asked, chewing toast. Oh, will there be singing? Probably. Jamie considered this. Can I sit next to Mr. Rutt? May smiled. If he lets you. They arrived just before the bell. The yard was full already. Wagons parked, dresses fanned like sails, and the air thick with judgment. Mrs. Langley stood near the doors. Smile tight, eyes sharper than tacks. Red appeared from the side, boots dusty, hat in hand. He gave May a nod, then offered Jamie a wink. Together, they walked across the yard. People parted, slow, reluctant. May carried her pie like it was a shield. Inside, the air was cooler, quieter. But the eyes didn't stop. Jamie sat between Rutt and Edith. Swinging his legs, the preacher spoke on kindness, on inclusion, on the sins of pride. Mrs. Langley didn't blink once. Afterward, the congregation moved outside for food. Long tables groaned under the weight of fried chicken, biscuits, beans, and more pies than anyone could eat. May placed hers near the center. For a moment, no one touched it. Then Jamie, emboldened, cut a slice for Rhett, then one for himself, slowly. Others followed. Mrs. Langley approached near the end. She looked down at the dish, then up at May. Sherry, she said. Shame it's underdone. May looked her square in the face. Maybe your fork's just dull. Gasps rippled. Someone dropped a spoon. Mrs. Langley's lips twitched. She turned and walked away. Rhett leaned in. You could have thrown the pie. Would have made more of a statement. I like my pies unbroken, May said. But her hands were shaking, he noticed. Covered them briefly with his own. She didn't pull away. Later, as the tables emptied and the sun dipped, May stood near the edge of the yard watching Jamie chase fireflies. I haven't seen him run like that in months, Rhett said. He used to run in silence. Even when he laughed. Rhett nodded. That's not nothin'. May looked up at him. You think it'll hold? This piece. He was quiet for a long moment. No, he said, not yet. Then he nodded toward the far fence. Jonas Pike stood there, leaning against a post, watching the crowd. He showed up late, Rhett said. Didn't take food, didn't speak, just watched. Is he still talking to people? Not today. But he will. May turned to face him. If he tells him about Stillwater, about Robert, what happens then? Rhett didn't flinch. Then you tell them first. I can't. Why not? May looked away. Because I can't watch their faces twist when they realize what I let happen, who I believed. How long I stayed? Rhett's voice was steady. Then let them look at your face now. May shook her head. They don't want truth. They want clean stories. Then give them something messier. But real. Jamie ran up just then, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. Can we stay for the lanterns? He asked. May hesitated, then nodded. Jamie whooped and ran off again. Rhett smiled faintly. He doesn't ask for much. No, May said, and I already owe him more than I can repay. Later that night, the tables were cleared, the lanterns lit, and the crowd thinner. May walked Jamie home under a sky full of stars, Rhett a few paces behind them. She felt the weight of eyes lessen. The threat hadn't vanished. But something had shifted, not trust, not yet. But maybe a corner turned. She tucked Jamie in, kissed his forehead, and went downstairs. Edith was waiting with a pot of tea. You did good, she said. May sat. Did I? Edith poured. You stood your ground. That counts for more than people admit. May sipped. It won't stop what's coming. No, Edith said. But it tells folks you're not afraid to look it in the eye. At midnight, Rhett knocked once, quiet. May met him on the porch. He didn't say anything, just handed her a letter. Found it nailed to my barn door. May opened it. The paper was finer, the ink darker, 5 words written in sharp, angry script. Tell them everything. Or I will. May's fingers curled. It's Jonas, she asked. Rhett nodded. Then I will. Rhett's eyebrows lifted. You sure? May stared out in the dark. No, she said. But it's not his story to tell. Tell them everything. Rhett says, or I will. The church was nearly empty when May walked in the next morning. No Sunday service, no crowd, just still pews, the scent of old wood, and sunlight bleeding in through warped glass. She sat in the third row, hands clenched, her eyes fixed on the altar but not seeing it. The air was thick with memory. She remembered kneeling in churches like this, smaller ones, where the sermons were louder than the roofs were strong, where her prayers got smaller each time Robert told her God wanted obedience, not questions. Now she had questions, and no God in mind to answer them. Footsteps echoed behind her. She didn't need to turn to know it was Rhett. He sat one row back, voice low. You sure this is how you want to do it? No, she said. But it's the only way that doesn't leave someone else telling my story wrong. A long silence, then. It might not go how you hope. I'm not hoping for anything, she said, just not hiding anymore. She stood. Rhett didn't try to stop her. May didn't go to the town square. She went to the Mercantile. Just after noon, when the most voices would gather for shade and gossip and flour, she stepped through the door and straight into a dozen conversations. They stopped when they saw her. Mrs. Langley stood near the bolts of calico, stiff-backed and expectant. Mr. Cowley, the store owner, blinked like he didn't know whether to greet her or hide behind the sugar barrels. May moved to the front of the room. People made space, not kindly, but they made it. I'm not here to make peace, she said. Not here to beg forgiveness, either. A few murmurs. I'm here to tell the truth. Because someone else is threatening to twist it, and I won't let him. She looked at them, not above them, not through them. I'm from Stillwater. I lived there with a man named Robert Callahan. He was, well, respected, rich. He preached without a pulpit, said what was right and wrong with his hands and his fists. Someone gasped. May didn't flinch. I believed him. For too long. And when I finally didn't, it was too late to leave clean. He hurt me. He hurt others. And I stayed, thinking I could outlast it. She paused. Then I got pregnant. And that was the first thing he couldn't control. Silence. Even the cash drawer didn't dare ring. I left, May said. I ran. With nothing but my son and a name I didn't want to keep. I've been running ever since. Until here. Someone near the shelves whispered. Why now? May turned. Because Jonas Pike is in town. And he knew Robert. Knew what he did. And said nothing. He's trying to barter with the truth like it's his. Mrs. Langley spoke. And how do we know you're telling the truth? May met her gaze. You don't. That's the risk. Another silence. Then Edith stepped through the door behind her, voice steady. I was a midwife in Tulsa before I came here. I saw the bruises on May's hips 3 weeks after she arrived. I saw the way her son flinched when someone raised a hand too fast. Nobody teaches that kind of fear. You learn it. Edith looked around. Don't talk to me about proof unless you want to see the records. A heavy pause, then Rhett walked in, and beside him, Sheriff Burke. The crowd shifted. Burke looked tired, as usual, but something in his stance said he'd been waiting for this. May? He said. You willing to make a formal statement? May nodded. Yes. You'll have to swear to it. I will. You'll have to name Robert Callahan. I just did. He scratched his neck. It won't keep you safe. Not entirely. I'm not asking for safety, she said. Just a start. Burke nodded. Just once. I'll draft the affidavit. He turned and walked out. Mrs. Langley said nothing. Her hands were white on the fabric bolts. May turned to go. But Rhett stopped her. May, he said softly. What do you want them to remember most? She thought for a moment, then said, that I told it myself, before anyone else could use it against me. That night, the porch was quiet. Jamie was already asleep, and Edith had gone to bed early. May sat with a cup of cold coffee, staring at the sky. She heard Rhett's boots before she saw him. He leaned against the rail. They're talking, he said. I figured. Some in your favor, some not. May nodded. I'm not here to report, he added. Just wanted to say I saw what you did. And I believe you. May didn't respond right away. Then she said, I thought it would feel better. Doesn't always, Rhett said. But it lasts longer than hiding. She nodded. I don't know what comes next. That's all right. Jonas won't stop. No, Rhett said. But he might change. May looked over. You think men like him can? Rhett didn't smile. No. But I think they can lose power. That's enough. May set her cup down. Thank you, she said. For what? For being the only man in 6 years who didn't try to own me with kindness. Rhett's face softened. You don't owe me thanks. Just don't lie to yourself about how strong you are. I won't, May said. Not anymore. She meant to go to sleep after that, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She walked out back, where the shadows were thicker, and the wind louder. There, nailed to the shed door, was another note, only this time. The paper wasn't blank. It had Robert's handwriting, neat, elegant, controlled. Found you. Coming soon. Tell the boy I said hello. May stared at it for a long time. Then she burned it in Edith's stove. Didn't tell Rhett. Didn't wake Jamie. Didn't cry. She just sat there, listening to the fire eat the past, and whispered, He's coming. The last word burned black into the stove door was, soon. May didn't sleep. She sat by the stove long after the last ember flickered out, knees drawn to her chest, arms wrapped tight. Morning came without permission. Jamie stirred upstairs. Rhett knocked once before sunrise, but she didn't answer. Not yet. Robert's handwriting had been too precise, too familiar. She hadn't seen it in 6 years, but there it was. Clean, quiet, and confident. Not a threat, a promise. He knew where she was. He knew about Jamie. And now, she had to decide what to do with that knowing. By the time Jamie came down, rubbing his eyes and mumbling about eggs, May had her boots on and her coat buttoned. She kissed his forehead and told him she had errands, told him to stay with Edith and be good. Her voice didn't shake. That was something. She didn't go to the market. Didn't head to the schoolhouse or the church. She walked straight through town to Rhett's land. He was digging fence posts when she reached the cabin's half-framed bones. Dust clung to his shirt, sweat beading on his brow. He straightened when he saw her, no smile. Just eyes that knew something had changed. He's coming. May said. Rhett lowered his hammer. You sure? She handed him the remains of the note, just the corner that hadn't burned. He read the inked word soon. God! He muttered. You didn't tell Burke. What would he do? Send a telegram and ask Robert to behave. Rhett folded the charred paper in half and slipped it into his shirt pocket. You think he'll show up quiet? No, May said. Robert doesn't do quiet. Rhett looked past her toward the hills. You want to leave? I want to stop leaving. She moved toward the cabin. Her boots thudded on the unfinished floor. I want to stand somewhere and not be chased off it. Rhett followed. Then we start here. I need to tell you something first. She sat on the windowsill, even though the glass hadn't been installed yet. What I said at the mercantile. It wasn't all of it. Rhett leaned against the frame, arms crossed, waiting. Robert was more than cruel, May said. He was smart. Careful. He had half that town fooled. Preached without ever touching a Bible. Knew just how far he could push without leaving marks that showed. Rhett's jaw tensed. I stayed because I thought, maybe if I could fix it, I wouldn't be dirty, wouldn't be broken. When I finally ran, I took Jamie and a pistol. I would have used it if I'd had to. She looked up at Rhett. But the part I never told. What keeps me up at night is that for a while, I didn't want to run. I wanted to win. He didn't speak right away. When he did, his voice was low. That's not weakness, May. That's survival. No, she said. That's how people like him keep power. We convince ourselves we can win their game. Rhett stepped forward, his boots scraping against unfinished floor. You're not playing his game anymore. She looked at him. Really looked. Then help me end it. His nod was small, but it carried weight. They spent the rest of the day planning. May gave Rhett the names Robert might use. Aliases he'd picked up over the years, business partners who owed him favors, the types of men he trusted to scout a place before stepping foot in it. Rhett wrote them all down. I'll check with Elias Wong, he said. He's got ears all over town. May blinked. The grocer. He runs messages for the railroad on the side. Knows who checks in and who asks for rooms without windows. They walked back together just before sundown. Deadwood's streets felt different. Like something was listening. Rhett stopped at the edge of the boarding house porch. You want me to stay? he asked. May looked toward the window, where Jamie's shadow moved behind the curtain. No. If Robert's watching, I don't want him knowing where Jamie sleeps. Rhett hesitated. Then take this. He handed her a small Derringer pistol, wrapped in cloth. May held it without speaking. You're not dirty, he said. You're not broken. She met his eyes. But I am angry, she whispered. He nodded once. Then don't waste it. That night, May locked every window. Jamie was already asleep, curled around his wooden horse. She set the Derringer on the nightstand and lay beside him fully clothed. When the floor creaked outside her room, she didn't flinch. She gripped the pistol and stepped out. It was Edith, holding a candle. Sorry, the older woman said. Thought I heard someone downstairs. May exhaled. Just me. Edith eyed the pistol, expecting ghosts. May gave a half smile, one in particular. Edith studied her a moment, then nodded. You hear anything in the night, you knock on my wall. I will. Edith hesitated, then softly. You ever wonder if the fear's worse than the man? May thought of Robert's letters, his voice, his fists. No, she said. The man's worse. At dawn, the sheriff came knocking. Burke looked bleary, coat unbuttoned, badge hanging crooked. We got a stranger checked in at Mrs. Cora's inn. Quiet fella, asked for no light and a basin for shaving. May stiffened. Did he give a name? James Carlton, she nodded. That's him. Burke exhaled. You sure? I'd bet my life. Burke scratched his temple. That's what I'm afraid of. She looked him square. So arrest him. For what? We got no warrant. No complaint. Yet. Then wait until he does, May said. But don't blink. The sheriff nodded. You see him first, you tell me. Don't approach. Don't provoke. May's voice was steel. I don't provoke. I survive. He tipped his hat and left. Red arrived minutes later. I heard, he said. May was already lacing her boots. Then let's make a list of what comes next. He looked at her closely. You sure you're ready for this? No, she said. But I'm more ready than he thinks. She buckled her coat, tied her hair back. Then she tucked the Derringer into her belt. If Robert knows where I am, if he hears anything. He won't, Rhett said. Not if we stay ahead of it. That night, someone nailed a dead bird to her door. May didn't scream when she found the bird. It was still early. Dawn not yet broken, sky the color of gunmetal. She opened the door to fetch firewood, and there it was, a blackbird nailed beak, first to the wood above her head, wings pinned wide, feathers soaked dark with blood, one glassy eye staring down. The nail wasn't rusted. It was clean, fresh. May stood for a long moment beneath it, the axe limp in her hand, her breath short and tight. She felt the weight of the message without needing words. Robert was in town, not hiding, not waiting, watching, and he wanted her to know. She didn't touch the bird. Just stepped back inside, locked the door, and bolted it. Jamie was still asleep upstairs, wrapped in his quilt. She didn't want him seeing it. She made coffee with shaking hands and waited for Rhett. He arrived less than an hour later, face taut, jaw unshaven. I saw it, he said, stepping in without waiting to be asked. Sheriff's already been. He took it down. May poured him a mug. Was it Robert? Could have been one of his men. Sheriff said the inn's register shows Robert signed out sometime in the night. Signed out. May's voice cracked. Left a bill. Paid in full. Then he's not gone. No, Rhett said. He's just walking quieter. She sipped her coffee. Stared at the back of her hand. The skin looked older today. Like something had passed over it in the night. And taken something she didn't notice until it was gone. Someone's helping him, she said. Rhett nodded. Jonas Pike. May didn't speak, didn't need to. Rhett leaned forward. You still want to draw him out? Yes, she said, but not in public. Not with Jamie nearby. Rhett hesitated. Then there's a place. It was an abandoned line shack 3 miles north, past the edge of Deadwood's town limits, where the tree line thickened and the dirt track vanished into scrub. Used by cowboys years back when herding pushed east, now it sat quiet, half collapsed, the roof bowed like a man too tired to stand straight. Why here? May asked. Stepping through the broken door. No law. Rhett said. No people. Just space. And if Robert's really watching, we leave the right trail. He'll come. May looked around. The room was empty but not lifeless. Old boots sat in a corner, a rusted tin plate on the table. It smelled like damp pine and rust. "I'll stay nearby," Rhett said. "But close enough." May glanced over. Close enough for what? "If he shows up and talks, fine. But if he doesn't talk..." She nodded. "You shoot." He didn't blink. "Only if he tries first." May stepped toward the fireplace. A bird's nest had been built into the hearth. Empty now, but lined with thread and straw. She looked at it, then at Rhett. "I want to face him," she said. "I want to look him in the eye and not feel smaller." "You're not." "Tell that to the part of me that still dreams like a locked room." Rhett's voice was quiet. "Then let's open it." They set the bait 2 hours later. May left a note with Edith. Said she was going to the creek with Jamie for a picnic. Said not to worry if she was gone till sundown. Then she handed Jamie off to Burke's wife, under the pretense of errands. She didn't kiss him goodbye. Didn't trust her hands to stop shaking. Then she and Rhett walked north. When they reached the shack, he handed her the pistol, loaded, small enough to hide under her coat sleeve. "I'll circle to the ridge," he said. "You see anyone but me. Don't wait." May nodded. "If he comes, I'll hold him there. You don't owe him anything." Rhett said. "I know." He disappeared into the trees. She stepped inside and closed the door. Time slowed. The afternoon pressed against the windows like thick breath. Dust swirled in lazy spirals. A single fly buzzed near the ceiling. May waited. She tried not to count the minutes, but her mind did it anyway. 20, 40, 90, then footsteps, not cautious, not fast, just steady. May stood in the center of the room. Hands at her sides, the door creaked, and Robert Callahan walked in like he'd never left. He looked older, his coat finer, hair neatly trimmed, boots polished. But his eyes hadn't changed. They swept the room, landed on her, and narrowed just slightly. "My," he said, as if tasting the word, "you look well." She didn't answer. He stepped closer. "I heard you were baking pies." "Talking in church." Making quite the name. Still she didn't speak. He smiled. "You always did like pretending." May raised the pistol. "Don't." He stopped. But the smile didn't fade. "Violence never suited you," he said. "You were better as soft, quiet. You don't get to define me anymore." Robert tilted his head. "I protected you. You owned me. I gave you a home. You gave me bruises." He laughed, not loud. Just a short exhale, like she'd made a childish mistake. "You think this changes anything? You think Deadwood cares what you say? They'll turn on you the minute you stop feeding them." They already heard the truth. "But not my truth," he said, stepping forward again. "And you know how I sound when I lie." She flinched. He caught it. His smile widened. "You should have stayed gone." He whispered. "I did. Until Jamie needed better." Robert's face darkened. "You don't say his name." May kept the gun steady. "You don't even think it." A pause. Then Robert said, "He's mine." "No," May said. "He's not." They stared at each other. Then Robert moved fast. His hand went inside his coat. May fired. The shot rang out like thunder in a canyon. Robert staggered back, clutching his shoulder. The second shot never came. Rhett burst through the back door, rifle up, eyes blazing. Robert stumbled, fell to one knee. Blood soaking through his sleeve. He looked up, face twisted. "This isn't over." May stepped forward. "Yes," she said, gun still raised. "It is." Sheriff Burke arrived 20 minutes later. Robert was cuffed, pale, but alive. Rhett's report was clean, May's statement clearer. Self-defense, witnessed. The sheriff took Robert without a word. May watched them ride away from the cabin door. Rhett stood beside her. "You all right?" She nodded, then shook her head. "I will be," she said, "but not tonight." He didn't press. They walked back through the trees in silence. Deadwood waited. So did tomorrow, in the shadows of the trees. A second pair of boot prints trailed behind them, fresh, deep, and facing the shack. It was near midnight when Rhett noticed the second set of tracks. He'd been circling the ridge one last time, restless, sleep nowhere near. Something had been gnawing at the edge of his thinking. A quiet dissonance that hadn't clicked until his boot landed next to the print. It was deeper than his, fresh, facing the shack. But it didn't belong to May, or Robert, or himself. Someone else had been watching, And they hadn't left with Robert. He crouched, brushing fingers across the print, wide tread, heavy boot, no horses nearby. That meant they'd come on foot. Deliberate, not drifting through hunting. By the time he got back to the boarding house, May was still up, staring out the front window like she could see through the dark. "You were right," he said without preamble. She didn't move. How close? Close enough to see everything. But not help. Not intervene. May turned. Her eyes were dry. But her voice was stripped bare. "Jonas." Rhett nodded. "It fits." May stepped away from the window. "Then we need to finish this before he tries to rewrite the ending." The next morning, the town was humming again, buzzing with the news of Robert's arrest. Some people cheered it quietly. Others doubted the whole thing, whispering about how quickly law turned soft on a woman's tears. May walked through it like a shadow, polite but silent. Jamie clutched in one hand and her satchel in the other. She left him with Edith, and then made her way to the sheriff's office. Burke looked like he hadn't slept, either. He had a tin cup in his hand and paperwork stacked like bricks on his desk. "Jonas Pike," she said. The sheriff didn't look up. "I know. You saw the tracks." "I did." "Then why isn't he in cuffs?" "Because no law's been broken." "Not yet." May stared at him. "Following someone into the woods with a gun doesn't count." Burke set down his cup. Listen to me. Jonas has friends in this town. He's careful. Smiles in the right places. Keeps a clean ledger. I need more than boot prints." May leaned in, voice tight. "Then I'll get you more." He nodded slowly. "Be careful how." Rhett found Jonas that afternoon, sitting at the back of the saloon like he owned the floorboards. Rhett didn't sit, just stood over him. "You followed us." Jonas didn't blink. "You'll need to be more specific." Rhett lowered his voice. "To the shack." "You were there, watching." Jonas smiled thin. "Maybe I was just out for a walk." "You pick strange paths." "I like the trees." Rhett leaned closer. "You thinking of finishing what Robert started?" Jonas's smile dropped, just slightly. Robert was a lot of things. Loyal was one of them. "You don't want to do this?" Rhett said. "You think she's worth dying for?" "I think she's worth living like a man for." Jonas stood slowly. "You see what happens when you back a cornered dog." Rhett didn't move. "You see what happens when you try to bite someone who's not afraid anymore." They stood like that, close, unblinking, until the bartender cleared his throat, and both men stepped back. Jonas adjusted his coat. "Tell her, if she wants me gone. She'll have to say it out loud." Rhett didn't answer. He just watched him leave. Back at the boarding house, May was waiting on the porch. Rhett told her everything, the exchange, the tone, the look in Jonas's eyes. "He's pushing," she said. "Wants me to snap first. He's daring you to prove yourself." May folded her arms. "Then I'll do it." Rhett tilted his head. "How?" She stared at the street below. 2 days later, the town gathered at the Green for Founders' Day. A celebration stitched together with bunting and sour lemonade. There were speeches, a fiddle band, and a stage. May took it. She didn't wait for permission. She stepped up between the mayor and a schoolteacher reading a poem, and she held a folded piece of paper in her hand. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she began, "but I've got something that needs saying." The murmur rolled like thunder. She raised her voice. 2 weeks ago, a man who hurt me came to this town. Some of you doubted it. Some of you believed me. But there's another man walking your streets who saw it happen. Who let it happen? Who watched? She scanned the crowd, found Jonas standing near the back, arms crossed, watching. Jonas Pike helped hide Robert Callahan's crimes. He followed me into the woods. He knew what would happen at that shack. A gasp. Someone dropped their lemonade. "I'm not asking you to run him out. I'm not asking for punishment. I'm telling the truth before he can twist it. Before silence gets rewritten as innocence." She held the paper up. "This is Robert's confession. Signed. Admitted." She looked at Jonas. "I'm not afraid of shadows anymore. Especially not ones shaped like men." Then she stepped off the stage. No one clapped, but no one stopped her. That night, Jonas was gone, left no note, no wagon tracks, just vanished. Sheriff Burke called it cowards travel. Done under moonlight and silence. Rhett found May in the garden behind Edith's, pulling weeds with more force than needed. "You all right?" She wiped her hands. "No. You want to talk?" She looked up. "I don't know what to do with the quiet now." Rhett sat beside her on the edge of the trough. "Most folks don't. Peace is loud when you're not used to it." May nodded. "Thens. You think he'll come back?" "I think he's smart enough not to." "And if he's not?" Rhett's voice was firm. "Then he'll learn regret in a hurry." May pulled another weed, slower this time. "I don't want revenge." "I know. I just want to not flinch when the wind changes." Rhett didn't speak for a while. Then, gently, "That day's coming. I can feel it." She smiled, just faintly, maybe. Behind them, Jamie laughed inside, chasing Edith's cat. May closed her eyes. Just for a moment, let herself breathe. That night, someone slipped a folded note under the door. No name, just 3 words. "You missed one." The note sat on the kitchen table all night. May didn't touch it at first, just stared. 3 words, cramped and scrawled, not like Robert's neat handwriting. Not like Jonas's careful print. "You missed one." By morning, the paper was damp with the weight of the coffee cup she'd set on it. On purpose. Like pressing it down could keep it from being real. Rhett arrived just after sunrise. She didn't need to say anything. One look at her face and he went still. "It was under the door," she said. He picked it up, turned it over. "Not Robert," he murmured. "Not Jonas either." May nodded. "So who?" Rhett looked at her. "I think that's the question they want you asking." She sat down, hands on the table, calm, practiced. "No," she said. "It's not the question." Rhett tilted his head. "The question," she said, "is who else helped." They started with the names Robert had trusted. May remembered 3 men from Stillwater who'd come to the house often, always with a bottle or a ledger. One ran dry goods. Another worked as a ranch broker. The third, Frank Danner, was a banker with a soft voice and cold eyes. "I liked to talk when Robert wasn't around," May said. "Told me things I think he wanted me to repeat back to Robert." Rhett frowned. "Information runner. Maybe more." They checked with Sheriff Burke, who pulled up an old registry from a cattle auction the year before. Frank Danner had signed in under an alias. But it wasn't the name that mattered. It was the witness, Elias Wong, the grocer's son, who'd carried mail that day. "I remember the man," Elias said, "because he tipped me with a silver dollar and told me to forget he was ever there." May leaned forward across the store counter. "Did you?" Elias hesitated. "I tried." "Where'd he go?" Elias's eyes darted, then he leaned in. "Red Bluff." Rhett stiffened. "That's 40 miles east. Too far to ride in secret. Unless someone brings him in." May straightened. "You think he's here?" Rhett looked at her. "Or coming?" They spent the next day quietly asking, checking the stables, the saloons, the depot manifest. Rhett sent a wire to a contact in Red Bluff, asking for confirmation on Danner's whereabouts. The reply came by evening. "Left town 3 nights ago. Eastbound, no return logged." May read it 3 times, then said, "He's here. Somewhere." That night, she kept Jamie close, too close, he noticed. "Why can't I sleep at Edith's?" he asked, brows drawn. May knelt beside his cot. "Just for now, baby. Just until I say so." "Is someone coming?" She hesitated, then nodded. "But we'll be ready." He held her hand until sleep won. She didn't sleep at all. Next morning, Sheriff Burke came knocking. "Got news," he said, voice grim. "One of the horses from the East Gate stable was reported missing." "When?" "Last night." "Quiet. Saddle left behind. But one man asked for feed early. Said he was prepping for a pack trip. Name? Didn't leave one. But the stable boy said he had banker's shoes." May and Rhett exchanged a look. "Danner." Burke nodded. "We'll comb the woods." "No," May said. "He wants us to do that. Wants us chasing shadows." She turned to Rhett. "We'll pull him in our direction." "How?" "We tell him I know more than I do." By noon, the rumor was planted. May had told the mercantile clerk she'd found a second letter from Robert. One that named names, claimed it held proof of who helped cover up the abuse. She let it spread like wildfire. By sundown, half the town had heard. So had Danner. She was sure of it. That night, she sat on the porch with Rhett, lantern low, rifle resting across her knees. "You sure you want to be the bait again?" he asked. May nodded. He doesn't want Robert in jail. He wants silence. She might come shooting. She met his gaze. Then he'd better be fast. A beat passed. Then Rhett said, "You said something once about not flinching when the wind changed." May looked out across the dark. "Yeah. Well, the wind's shifting." She smiled. "Good." It happened just past midnight. She heard it before she saw it. Soft boots on porch planks, not bothering to sneak. A man who thought confidence was the same as power. The door creaked. She didn't raise the rifle. "Come in, Frank," she said. He stepped through the door like he'd been invited, thin, mustached, polished, same eyes, same cold. "You've made a lot of noise, May. And you made a lot of silence." He looked around. No Rhett. He's not needed for this part. Danner smiled faintly. "You've always had more bite than bark. Robert said so." May's hand twitched. "Is that why you helped him?" she asked. "Because I needed putting down. I helped him because money moves faster in the hands of men who fear scandal." "And what about children?" May asked quietly. "Did you factor them into the ledger?" He shrugged. "Children grow up. They forget." May stood, slow. "I didn't." Danner's coat shifted. She saw the glint of metal. "Don't," she warned. But he was already reaching. The rifle barked once. Clean, precise. Danner dropped to the floor, clutching his hand. The pistol clattered free. May stepped over it and kicked it away. He groaned. "You broke it." "I aimed for the wrist. Be grateful." Footsteps thundered behind. Rhett, then Burke, then two deputies. Burke said, "Hauling Danner up, for what?" Danner hissed, "Conspiracy." "Threat." "An attempted murder," May said. "He drew first." Rhett looked at her. Impressed. "You planned this whole thing?" May stared at Danner, face unreadable. "No," she said. "He did." Later, after the blood was cleaned and Jamie was tucked safe in bed, Rhett sat across from her in the kitchen. "Why didn't you kill him?" he asked. May didn't speak for a moment. Then, "Because I wanted to see what he looked like losing." She sipped her coffee. "Robert taught him how to win. But no one ever taught him how to lose." Rhett leaned back. "You think it's over now?" May looked out the window. "I think the fire's out," she said, "but the ashes are still warm." And out on the porch, another note waited. No threat this time, just one word written in red inky: "Witness." The ink blood. May stared at the word stamped in red across the torn scrap of paper. Witness. No signature, no time, just that single word, thick, deliberate strokes. Pressed hard like it wanted to stain through the wood underneath. She didn't touch it, didn't need to. The message was clear. Someone had watched what happened in that kitchen, watched Danner draw, watched her shoot, and now, they wanted her to know eyes were still on her. By the time Rhett arrived, the porch had started to gray with frost. May stood just inside the door, arms crossed, the note still where she'd found it. He crouched to read it. "Red ink," he said quietly, "not blood. Ink." May nodded. "But the kind that takes time to dry. That wasn't written long before I found it." "Same hand." She shook her head. "Different. Sharper. More pressure in the lines." Rhett studied it again. "Someone's keeping track. Someone who didn't want Danner stopped." He looked up at her. "Or someone who did. But for their own reason." She looked past him, toward the trees. "Either way, it's not over." Later that morning, Sheriff Burke confirmed what she already suspected. No one in town had seen anyone approach her door. No stranger registered at the boarding house. No odd purchases at the general store. No courier or drifter matching a new description. But he did give her something else, a record. He said, sliding a page across his desk, "Stage depot. 3 weeks ago, right before Robert arrived." May read the name, her stomach turned. Ephraim Bell. She barely remembered the man's face, thin, pale, with glasses and the kind of voice that never rose above a whisper. But she remembered his silence. He'd been a deacon in Stillwater, the one who always nodded when Robert spoke, never questioned, never stepped in. He'd been in their house more than once, read scriptures over dinner, let Jamie sit in his lap. May's hand curled into a fist on the edge of the desk. "What's he doing here?" she asked. Burke leaned back. "That's what I want to know. He hasn't made noise, kept to himself, rents a room above the tailor's, pays cash. Uses no name on the register. Just initials. Rhett glanced at May. Think he wrote the note. Burke said. May folded the page in half, tucked it into her coat. I want to talk to him. Not without me. Rhett said. Burke nodded. Not without your gun. They found Ephraim late in the afternoon, just as the tailor was closing up. He was in the alley behind the shop, feeding scraps to a stray dog. His coat was threadbare. Eyes sunken, he looked smaller than May remembered. But memory had a way of stretching monsters. He turned as they approached, slow and calm. Miss Kelly, he said. May froze. No one in town called her that. You knew I was here? She said. I knew you'd find me. Rhett shifted. You leave the note. Ephraim's eyes flicked to him. No. But you know who did. A pause, then. I suspect. May stepped forward. Why come here, Ephraim? Why follow this all the way to Deadwood? I didn't follow, he said. I fled. May blinked. I heard what happened to Robert, he went on, and Danner, and Jonas. I thought maybe justice was rising out of the ground like something reborn. May narrowed her eyes. You think this is justice? Ephraim looked down. I think it's what was always coming. Rhett's voice sharpened. Who else is here, Ephraim? Who sent the note? He hesitated. Then she did. May stiffened. She? Ephraim nodded. Easter Row. The name hit like a cold wind. She was one of Robert's housekeepers, quiet. Never spoke out. Never disobeyed. But she saw everything. May swallowed hard. I thought she died. She disappeared, Ephraim said. The night you ran. Some said she followed you. Others said Robert buried her in the woods. May whispered. He didn't. Ephraim shook his head. No. She's here. Leaving messages. Why? To make sure the story ends the way it should have started. May's voice dropped. And how's that? Ephraim looked at her, and for the first time, there was something close to sorrow in his eyes. With the truth written so plain, even God can't ignore it. That night, May sat in silence beside Jamie's bed. He slept easy, safe. He didn't know about Ephraim, about Esther, about the ghost of a life they barely escaped. She touched his hair gently, tucking it back from his brow. Rhett came to the door, waited without speaking. Do you think it's true? She asked. That she's still out there. I think Ephraim believes it, he said. And if she is? Rhett stepped into the room. Then maybe this story's not just about survival anymore. May turned to him. What then? His voice was quiet. Maybe it's about resurrection. May looked down at the folded note again, now in her lap. Witness. She traced the letters with her thumb. If Esther Rowe was here, if she was guiding this from the shadows, then the final piece was still missing, the one person who'd seen it all, and hadn't spoken, yet. The next morning, a second note arrived. This time nailed to the schoolhouse door, one line, tell them what he did to the boy. The schoolhouse door hung open when May arrived. She didn't notice at first, not until she saw the nail. It caught the light, silver and sharp, driven into the center plank like someone wanted it noticed. Beneath it, a torn piece of ledger paper fluttered in the morning breeze. She stepped closer, heart already pounding. Tell them what he did to the boy. The words were written in the same sharp red ink, same hand as before. She stared at them, throat dry. Jamie. By the time she got to Edith's, Jamie was sitting at the table with a cup of milk, drawing on the back of a flyer. He looked up and smiled. Ma. She scooped him up without a word, arms tight around his ribs. Are we going somewhere? He asked, confused by the suddenness. No, baby. She whispered. Just needed to see you. Edith raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Rhett arrived minutes later, boots still dusty from the edge of town. She pulled him aside. It's him, she said, voice low. Robert. It's always been him. What do you mean? May showed him the note. Rhett's jaw tightened. The boy. He means Jamie. She nodded. But Robert never laid a hand on him, right? Her silence was answer enough. Rhett stared. No bruises, nothing visible. But Jamie started waking up screaming, wetting the bed, flinching when doors slammed. Rhett's voice dropped to almost nothing. And you didn't say. I didn't know. May snapped. Then softer. I didn't let myself. Rhett was quiet for a long time. Then, he remembers. May shook her head. He was too little. But the fear stayed. They stood in the hallway, The house warmed behind them, winter pushing against the windows. Finally, Rhett said, "Then it's time the town knew." May turned. "What good does it do now?" "It doesn't do good. It does truth." She stared at the note again. The red letters. Whoever wrote it didn't want vengeance, they wanted reckoning. Sheriff Burke didn't argue. He read the note, rubbed his hand down his face, and said, "I'll call a town meeting."
"Tonight."
"No," May said. "I'll call it." Burke nodded. "You sure you want to be the one to say it?" "No," she said, "but it has to come from me." That afternoon she wrote it all out by hand, every memory. Every flicker of doubt she'd buried. Every time Jamie had reached for her in the night, eyes wide with fear she didn't understand. She wrote it, and she didn't stop until her fingers ached and the ink smeared. Then she folded the paper once and slid it into her coat pocket. "Are you reading it?" Red asked. "No," she said. "I'm telling it." By sunset, the town square was full, not the festival kind of full. No lanterns, no music, just bodies, faces, people May had passed 100 times in the street. People who'd smiled at her and shaken their heads behind her back. Now they waited in silence. May stepped up on the steps of the old church and turned to face them. She didn't need the paper. She held the square of it in her hand, but didn't open it. "I'm not here to ask for your pity," she said. "I'm here because the lie is still breathing." She paused, let the weight settle. "You all know what Robert did to me. Some of you believed it. Some of you didn't. That's fine. I didn't come to make you feel better." She glanced toward Edith, who held Jamie's hand near the back. "I came to tell you something I didn't say before." May swallowed, chest tight. Robert hurt Jamie. Not with fists, not with bruises you could see. But he did hurt him. A murmur rose. She spoke louder. "My son, my baby, learned to fear quiet footsteps, to flinch at kindness, to distrust his own memories." A man in the crowd looked down. A woman pressed her hand to her mouth. May's voice cracked, but she didn't stop. "And I let it happen. Not because I didn't care. Because I was too scared to believe it myself." She stepped down one stair. But silence is how men like Robert survive. Another step. Not anymore. She dropped the folded paper at her feet. Let it flutter in the wind. "I won't carry it for him. I won't carry it for anyone." And then she stepped off the stairs and walked through the crowd. No one stopped her. But the silence behind her was different this time. Not disbelief, not doubt, grief and shame. That night, Rhett sat beside her on the porch. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Then he said, "He can't touch you now." "I know." "You think Jamie needs to know?" She looked toward the dark window. "Someday. When he can hold it without it breaking him." Rhett nodded. May leaned her head on the rail. "You think that was Esther's hand again?" Rhett considered. "If it was, she's doing more good from the shadows than most folks do in the sun." May smiled, faint. "You think she'll come out?" Rhett shook his head. "No. But she'll be watching." A pause. Then he said, "You were brave tonight." May looked down. "I wasn't brave. I was just done being scared." At dawn, the boarding house mailbox held one last envelope, with a court seal burned into the wax, and May's name spelled perfectly across the front. May didn't open the envelope right away. She stared at it, still cold from the morning air. The court seal pressed deep into the red wax. Her name was written in ink. Neat, formal, not the work of Esther, not a threat. It was official from the courthouse in Stillwater. She turned it over slowly, then broke the seal. Inside, 3 sheets of folded parchment and a 1-line cover notice. In re-custody claim filed by the estate of Robert Callahan. May's chest tightened. She sat down hard at the kitchen table and unfolded the rest. It wasn't just a notice. It was a summons. Robert's estate, meaning someone acting on his behalf, had filed for a custody hearing for Jamie. Even after death, the man found ways to claw at her life. She read the line again. Custody claim. Rhett found her still at the table when he came in. "You look like someone blew out the lanterns in your head," he said, then paused. "What is it?" She passed him the letter. He read quickly, then twice more. "His estate," he asked. "Who the hell is acting on his behalf?" May shook her head. "He didn't have family. No blood kin I ever met. There's someone. A trustee. A lawyer. Maybe one of the men who worked under him, trying to protect whatever name he thinks Robert left behind. Rhett laid the paper down flat. Why now? May answered without blinking. Because I stood up and told the truth. They met with Sheriff Burke that afternoon. He read the summons with a grim expression, then pinched the bridge of his nose. I've seen this before. When a man with money dies, his ghost keeps lawyers fed for years. This isn't about money, May said. It's about Jamie. Burke nodded. They're trying to prove you're unfit, that your past makes you unstable, the abuse, the arrest. Hell, even the fact that Jamie's not in school every day. May clenched her jaw. He's safe. That should count for something. Burke sighed. In a just world, it would. He slid the letter back to her. But this is a legal maneuver. One meant to scare. Or break you, Rhett said. We need to find out who filed it. Burke nodded. I'll send a wire to the court. But May, this'll go fast. They'll try to get a judge before month's end. May's voice was steady, but low. Then we fight back before they get the ink dry. By that evening, word had spread. That's how small towns worked. You could whisper into one wall, and the other side of town would cough. May kept her head up as she walked through the streets, even when whispers followed. She saw the glances, some pity, some suspicion, and then, in the window of the general store, she saw it, a flyer, posted beneath the ad for pig feed, and suing thread. It read, public hearing regarding the welfare of James Callahan, minor, to be held next Thursday, Stillwater Court. No mention of her name, just his. Rhett saw it too. He pulled it down before she could. They're trying to erase you from the picture, he said. May folded the flyer in her hands. Let's make sure they can't. The next few days blurred into preparation. She wrote statements, collected witness names. Edith agreed to testify. So did Burke. So did Elias Wong. And even the stable boy who'd seen Danner the night he vanished. But it still felt thin. Truth wasn't always enough in courtrooms. Sometimes what mattered was who stood behind you. And how loud they spoke. That night, as she sat reading her notes, Rhett placed something on the table in front of her. A letter, old, faded. May picked it up, confused. It's from Esther, Rhett said. Found it slipped under the back door. This morning. May opened it slowly. The handwriting was small, slanted, but careful. Inside was a single sentence. If the judge asks who broke the boy's voice, tell them he never learned to cry in words. May blinked hard. She's still protecting him, Rhett said. May traced the ink with her finger. No, she whispered. She's arming us. The morning of the ride to Stillwater came cold. May dressed Jamie herself, buttoned his coat, brushed his hair. Are we visiting someone? He asked. No, baby, she said softly. We're going to remind some people who you belong to. Rhett had the wagon waiting. Edith packed sandwiches. Burke handed her the wire. Confirmation of who filed the claim. Ephraim Bell. May's stomach turned. He said he fled. She muttered. Rhett read the name twice. So he lied. She said. He hid. Until he found a way to clean Robert's name by taking Jamie away. Burke looked grim. You ready for this? May helped Jamie up into the wagon, then climbed in beside him. She looked out at the quiet morning street, then back at the town she'd fought so hard to make safe. Her voice was calm. I wasn't strong enough to stop the first man, but I sure as hell will stop the last. The wagon rolled forward, toward Stillwater, toward the courthouse, toward whatever end waited. At the edge of town, a rider waited by the fence post, black coat, hat low, and a sealed envelope in his hand addressed only to Jamie. The rider didn't move as the wagon neared. May gripped the edge of the seat, one hand instinctively blocking Jamie from view. Rhett slowed the horses, watching the figure with hard eyes. The rider lifted his head. It was Ephraim Bell, not hidden anymore, not cloaked in shadows or sidelong warnings. He looked older than May remembered, like shame had worn him thinner than time ever could. I won't stop you, he said as Rhett climbed down. May narrowed her eyes. That'd be a first. Ephraim held out the envelope. It's not from me. Rhett took it, scanned the writing, then passed it to May. She opened it slowly. Inside was a short note, written in that now familiar slanted hand. Not all wounds leave marks. Let him keep the pieces you gave him, not the ones Robert broke. No name. But May didn't need one. Esther. May looked up at Ephraim. You're trying to fix something you helped ruin. I know, he said. And it won't be enough. She studied him. No, it won't. Then she looked back at Jamie, who was staring at the fields beyond, unaware of the decades of silence trying to close in on his little life. But maybe it'll help. The courthouse in Stillwater hadn't changed. Same cracked steps, same dry wind scraping through the eaves. May walked in carrying Jamie's hand, but it was her own legs that shook. Inside, the room was half full, local press, townsfolk curious for a spectacle. But when May stepped to the front, clutching her stack of handwritten notes, the room quieted. Judge Harlan was older than she expected, gray-bearded, tired-eyed, but he didn't seem indifferent. He listened, and then he spoke. Mrs. Kelly, he said, you may begin. May didn't read from the notes. She looked down at her son, then up at the judge, and she told the truth. She told it without polish, without theatrics. She told it raw, about Robert, about fear, about the soft ways a man could crush a child without raising a hand, about silence. Then she stepped aside and let Edith speak, and Sheriff Burke, and Elias, and finally Rhett, who, when asked his relation to the boy, said simply, I'm not his blood. But I'd bleed for him anyway. The judge asked few questions. Ephraim was called next. He stood without protest, voice flat, stripped bare. He admitted what he knew, what he saw, what he ignored, and finally why he'd filed the claim. To make things clean, he said. The judge stared at him. Son, he said, this court isn't in the business of pretending dirt never happened. Then he turned back to May. Mrs. Kelly, he said, do you want to make a final statement? May nodded. She stepped forward, knelt beside Jamie. You know I'll always protect you, she said softly. But I also want you to know this. What happened to you wasn't your fault. It never was. And it doesn't own you. You belong to no man's legacy, only your own. Jamie looked at her, eyes wide. Can we go home now? She smiled. Yeah, baby, we can. The judge ruled before lunch. Full custody, irrevocable, all claims dismissed, court adjourned. As they walked out, the wind kicked up across the steps, pulling Esther's note from May's coat pocket. She caught it just before it flew. She held it for a moment, then let it go. This time, she didn't chase it, let it drift, let it end. Weeks passed. Snow came early that year. Deadwood quieted. People looked at her differently now, not out of pity, out of recognition. She wasn't just the woman Robert left behind. She was the one who stood up. On a cold morning near the turn of the new year, May stood with Rhett by the fence behind the house, watching Jamie race the wind across the yard. He's getting stronger, Rhett said. May nodded, not just his legs. She reached into her coat, pulled out a new piece of paper, blank, and handed it to Rhett. What's this? He asked. She smiled. A story I'm finally ready to write. He stared at her for a beat, then said, title. She looked out at the sun climbing over the hills, the part where we stop surviving and start living. He grinned. Long title. May nodded. Long Road.